at NAAMSA Conference 2024 and met up with an old friend, can I say?
You may.
Neil Hill, President of Ford Motor Company, Southern Africa.
Actually, President of African Operations, so look after the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as our North African operations.
Okay, I think that's changed since I last saw you. That's why,
It's actually been like that for about the last 3 years.
Is it that long?
It's that long, Alan.
But Neil, great seeing you as always. And I suppose look behind us, Cape Town waterfront. What more can you ask for?
Great setting.
Yeah.
Nice to be able to bring, or to be a part of the team that has brought the AutoWeek down to Cape Town. And I think it's really, it's a different venue, it's a different location, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what the feedback is during the course of this year from everybody for the conference.
100%. And you past president of NAAMSA as well, so
yeah, that's correct. I mean, so I'm in my 5th year on the board of NAAMSA.
right.
So we have a very clear management structure in terms of how we govern NAAMSA and how the setup works. So yeah, I am currently in the position as past president and supporting Billy Tom, who's the current president, Peter van Binsbergen, who heads up the vehicle manufacturing setup. So it's a very good unit of people that we work very closely with, together with Tata Magasa, that represents the retailers, and then young Aishinger, who also represents the heavy, extra heavy and medium commercial sector.
No, absolutely. Now, what I'm wanting to concentrate on, if you don't mind, is yesterday there was a session from all of you talking history, heritage of your brand. Because let's put it out there, 100 years of manufacture of vehicles in South Africa. So NAAMSA is celebrating that. But in actual fact, they're celebrating Ford, aren't they?
100%, Alan. We are the only manufacturer that has reached the 100-year milestone. If you go back and look at the history, we were actually incorporated in 1923,
Right.
September of 1923, when Ford Motor Company was created. It was the 16th manufacturing facility outside of the US that was established, and the first vehicles actually came off the production line on the 19th of January 1924. It was an old wool shed in Port Elizabeth, or Gqeberha now.
Yeah.
And a staff complement from memory of about 21 people in the office and
Okay.
70 people on the production line. And in that very first year of production, we produced 1,446 Model T Fords on Africa's first rolling production line,
Right.
moving production line.
Now, just talking Model T for a minute. I mean, look, it's the quintessential veteran, old car, whatever word you want to use around it. Now, there are a lot of them still around in South Africa. I've been to a couple of meetings and found lots of them. Are a lot of those, were they all the South African built ones?
So Model Ts first arrived in South Africa in 1905. So very shortly after Henry Ford actually established the company, the company globally. People did start bringing in. There was a distributor who was importing vehicles, and then as the popularity grew, it became more and more apparent that we needed a local manufacturing setup.
Okay.
So that was established in 1923, as I said, and I think over 20,000 Model Ts were actually physically built in South Africa in Port Elizabeth.
Okay, I think it was about 5 years.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember. I'm a little bit hazy in exact, and we can share the full details with you. But the production run, there was about 20,000 Model Ts that were built. So that's why we do see a lot of Model Ts on South African roads.
Yeah, I mean, I've never got to drive one. I've been taken for a drive because you've got the 3-pedal, but the different pedal arrangement, things like that, right?
Correct. And not one of those on the floor is actually your accelerator.
Okay.
Your accelerator actually sits on the steering column,
Right.
and is a lever that you adjust.
Okay.
But then you've got clutch, gear 1, gear 2, and brake, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I've been driven in one.
Yeah.
I was offered to drive one, and I just said, look, I'm not ambidextrous enough to actually be trusted with somebody's pride and joy.
Yeah.
So that's why I actually respectfully declined, because I didn't want to crash it whilst I'm concentrating on all the pedals.
Believe me, I have that feeling all the time when I'm on the launches or test cars.
We prefer you not to do that, Alan.
I know. Let's not go there though. Okay. Neil, I'm wanting to really concentrate on special editions, because it's the proudly South African side of things. So over the history of Ford South Africa, you've also come up with a couple of unique models to South Africa, very special models, things like that.
Alan, as you're asking the question, I'm sort of sitting and racking through my brain in terms of going, okay, so what are the specials that I'm going to talk about? So, I mean, I think first and foremost, you've got to talk about Cortina.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit more modern, and I know that there will be people who will be listening to this and going, well, what about the Zephyr, the Anglia, the Console, the Galaxy, all of those things? But, if I think about some of the quintessential specials that we created, there was, of course, the Cortina Bucky.
Yeah.
And we did multiple iterations of the Cortina Bucky.
You've got to mention the Springbok edition.
We did the Springbok edition, and that was, if I remember, it was 76 that we did the Springbok edition. And there were 3 different iterations that we did of the Cortina Bucky.
Yeah.
So that in itself was ultimate. It was a real special.
And then, may I interrupt? Known as the P100 when it was sent over to the UK.
Correct. The P100 actually came later. That was one of the last editions of the Cortina Bucky. Then, of course, you've got to think about things like the XR6,
right?
The XR6 Interceptor, which were built in South Africa, but then also powered by the SXV6 engines that were produced in the Sterndale engine plant. Then one cannot forget the XR8, the Sierra XR8, the animal. 250 were only built ever. And that was to meet the homologation requirements so that we could race it in Group N Class A.
Okay, my question there, is were 250 built and were 250 sold? Because a lot of those homologation specials around that period, there's a lot of theories, conspiracy theories and everything else about the numbers.
Are you accusing us of lying about our numbers, Alan?
No, I'm saying some others did.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there, but I would guarantee that in my view, and I don't know the facts, so we'd have to go back and check it, there were probably more than 250 built.
Okay.
But we did retail 250 because that was the homologation requirement.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there were a couple of extras that were built and were used in the race car program and different elements like that. So that was also something that goes down as one of the collected pieces, and that's got the Mustang 5-litre V8 engine. And then I think that the one for me that is probably the biggest special and probably the most iconic in South Africa is the Bantam Bucky. That was built and developed in South Africa, and we did 3 different iterations of the Bantam Bucky, and I just remember how popular the Bantam was. I was running marketing at that particular point in time. We coined the phrase, "But you need a Bantam."
I remember that.
It was literally, and please forgive me for quoting another brand, but it was the Swiss Army knife of half-ton pickups, and it did everything.
Yeah.
And the requests that we get to bring back the Bantam are phenomenal.
I was just going to say to you now, considering one of your opposition in the market has just discontinued the only vehicle in that category, is there room and is there potential?
Alan, I think and Andrew Kirby and Peter van Binsberg had touched on this yesterday in their presentations. The reality is that because we've become so global in nature of all of our businesses, the ability to do small volume programs and specials like that is limited. When you run through the numbers, you think about our Ranger facility in Silverton, we've got an installed capacity of 200,000 units. We're supporting over 100 countries across multiple continents. Bantam, at best, 24,000 a year, based on 2,000 sales a month in South Africa.
Yeah.
And then you start looking at going, okay, so now I've got to find other export markets. And the reality is there's not really that appetite or demand for a half-ton pickup outside of South Africa.
It's interesting.
So therefore, the economies of scale we just can't get to work.
And there's no model in the global family that you could pull into yet.
We've looked at everything, and we've studied it a couple of times. We've looked at different alternatives, trying to find a smaller pickup that can come in below Ranger, and just where we would like to position it from a price and from an affordability perspective, and where we would have to position it, the gaps are just too far.
Look, I've owned a number of Fords in my life. Okay.
Thank you for your business.
not lately, unfortunately, but that's beside the point. But my first one was, of course, the iconic 1600 Sport, the original one in 1979. How's that?
Yep, I remember it very well because it was also my first car. I had a 1600 Sport in powder blue.
Mine was. Do you remember the gold, the metallic gold one?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. You going gold, Alan.
No, in those days, you know how I used to buy a car. I would walk into the dealership and say, what's in stock? Because I want it by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which literally, and that's how I ended up. It's called Golden Firelist. I don't know if you.
No, all I know is that as a young child growing up in South Africa, all I wanted and when I got my driver's license, that's all I wanted as my first vehicle was an Escort 1600 Sport.
Now, that wasn't unique to South Africa, but I think it really caught on in this country.
It did. I think Escort, especially with we were then heavily into rallying with Sarel van der Merwe as our driver. The Creaky Crawley, Ford Motorsport program. Sarel very, very successful. And then of course it went on. We also did the RS 2000 in that particular range. So that was also one of those iconic vehicles that Escort Mark 1, Escort Mark 2 were just phenomenal products in the Ford lineup.
Absolutely. I think Sierra, which in my book was actually ahead of its time.
It was. I think Sierra, styling-wise, really set an interesting trend in terms of where people went. I think a lot of people, I think it was also very polarizing. I think people either liked it or hated it. I loved the styling on Sierra, and it was a fantastic car to drive.
Well, I owned a 2-litre.
Right.
And my brother actually had the German, the 2.3. Which was a V6, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there was a the 2.3 was also a V6. But then you never got to drive the quintessential one beneath the XR8, which was the Sierra 3-litre IRS, which was the first one that we did with the fuel-injected SX V6 engine.
Okay.
And that was, when we moved from the Weber carburetor to a Lucas fuel injection system on the SX V6 engine.
I think we went from 110 to about 125 kilowatts.
Something like that,
Which was something else then.
Correct.
I mean, your top alphas were putting out in the 90s.
Yep.
So to go well over 100 was a big deal.
Yeah. And now, we got a 2-litre single turbo diesel engine that's pushing out 132 kilowatts in our Rangers and our Everests.
Correct, yeah. Neil, we could carry on for another hour, I'm sure, but fantastic. Just very quickly, what's next?
Look, I think Alan, for us, it's publicly known. We're about to launch the 7th generation Mustang in its 60th year.
Right.
So Mustang in 2024 is celebrating its 60th anniversary, and what better way for us to commemorate such a fantastic product like that with the launch of the new Mustang GT. And then we've also got the Dark Horse coming, which is a new addition that we're adding to the Mustang lineup globally. It's lauded as the most track-ready Mustang we've ever produced. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that vehicle on the roads. The demand, the interest in Mustang Dark Horse has been off the charts.
I can imagine.
By all accounts, talking to the team now, if you're looking for one, you're probably taking delivery 4th quarter next year, based on what the demand is that we're seeing, and we haven't even launched it yet. So I'm expecting that to get longer. But I think people are also not really paying attention to the GT, which is a phenomenal vehicle. I've had the privilege of seeing one. Right. I haven't driven it yet. So I am looking forward to doing that just before the press launch, so that when we do arrive at the media launch, I'm able to talk with authority on the vehicle, and I know that it will live up to all of the iconic Mustang, principles that make a Mustang a Mustang. And then next year we've got a couple more surprises, but I'm not going to get into 25 just yet.
So it's a case of watch this space.
Watch this space.
Neil, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, Alan. Always good talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.